This Farm Biodiversity template has been designed as a basic plan to assist farmers with writing a documented farm biodiversity plan as part of any environmental assurance programs or grant schemes, future certification schemes, such as the Farm Biodiversity Certification Scheme, and other things such as carbon trading as well. So this is hopefully just a documented plan that can help you put data together to enter into some of those different schemes or assurance programs where you need to provide evidence around biodiversity. So I'm going to take you through the template and just some of the websites that I find really useful and easy ways to put the information into the template. It's done in a Word form, so hopefully that's relatively easy for people to put their information in. The picture on the front page is just an example. You can obviously put a picture directly from your farm that represents biodiversity on your farm, so feel free to change the image as you need to. We're going to go through the plan and start here. So, for example, if you want to look up what bioregion you're in, if you're unsure of that, we're going to go into a particular website. All of these websites that I'm using for this tutorial are available on the instruction leaflet that's also a downloadable document on our website. So the instruction page has all of these links so that you can access them easily. So for bioregions, I use this particular website. It's going to drag it over. This one is called Visualizing Victoria's Biodiversity. We're going to use this web page a couple of times. So really, really easy map to use when you bring this one up. Obviously down here you've got your layers and you can see straight away there is a layer called Bioregions of Victoria. And when you turn that layer on, it brings up the bioregions for Victoria. We're going to base our example today down here in the Werribee South District. So as you can see here, it's that orangey brown colour, which down here links up here with the Otway Plain. The other way to have a look at which bioregion you are is if you actually click on the colour. It brings it up and tells you. So you can see here that we're on the Otway Plain, and you've also got the Victorian volcanic plain in this particular area as well. So let's click that off. And just for another example, say for example the green here, if you click on that, it tells you that it's the Highlands Southern Fall bioregion, this one over here. So that's the easiest way to look up your bioregion using this map. So I'm going to turn this layer off now. And if we go back to the template, so now you know which bioregion, you can type that information in. Most of you should know which local government area you're in, so I'm not going to show that information. You just type that one in. The next thing we're going to look at is ecological vegetation classes. So these are the different types of plant communities that are across your area, and we can actually go down to farm scale as well. So we're going to go straight back to that website that we were just on here. And the next layer that we can turn on is down here, vegetation and habitat. And when we turn this layer on, we can see there's a whole heap of listings here. We're just going to scroll down to Port Phillip and Western Port and turn this layer on here. So we don't want pre-1750. That's pre-clearing. We want this one here, Port Phillip. It's a better example. So when you turn that layer on, it does the same thing. It brings up colours to show you the different ecological vegetation classes across Victoria. So if we scroll in, I'm not sure why that hasn't worked. There we go. The colours are finally coming up. So likewise, we're going to head into this sort of Werribee South area down here. And I've just used the mouse, or you can use this here to just scroll in and make it closer. And likewise, you can see there's very slight colour variations in some of these. So rather than trying to figure out which colour is which, because obviously they're quite close and it can be difficult to tell them apart, it's easier to just click on the map and bring up your different colours here. So you can see, remember Otway Plain, so we can still see we're in the right bioregion, Otway Plain. And this particular ecological vegetation class along the river here is a plains grassy woodland. Likewise, if I click on the darker brown, it tells us that it is a the EVC is a floodplain riparian woodland. So you can see the different ecological vegetation classes in the particular area of Werribee South that we were looking at. And here you've got coastal salt marsh. So that's a really, really easy way to obtain this information all off one website. So I'm going to turn that one off now. And if we go back to our example here, so now you've got your bioregion, your local government area, your ecological vegetation class, and we're going to start filling in some of this detail here. So some of this is more specifically about your farm and what you have across your farm. So do you have native vegetation on your farm or bordering your property? And then a little bit of a description of the native vegetation on your property. Does it already form part of a vegetation corridor? And we're also next going to look at the types of threatened flora and fauna that you have in your local government area. And again, there's a website to make that a really easy way of looking at threatened species in your local government area. So the next website that we're going to look at is this one here, which is called Swift. So this is another really easy website to access. I use this one here under the threatened species. And when you click on these links, it brings up information that's going to really help put into your biodiversity plan. So down here, these are the ones that we're going to look at. You've got threatened flora by local government area and threatened fauna by local government area. So first of all, we had the flora. So if we click on this and look up the flora, again, you can see it's by local government area. We already know the local government area is the city of Wyndham. So we click on that next, and it's going to bring up the conservation status legend, and then it's going to start listing all the different plant species that are threatened species in the city of Wyndham. So we can bring up those species. To put that species list into your biodiversity template is obviously quite onerous, and there's quite a lot there. I tend to pick out some of the ones up here that are in your endangered and critically endangered categories. They're the ones I tend to just pick up on. So your CR and your EN species. So just go through and pluck out those ones that may be in your local government area. So you can see there's a few here on doing that. So if we go back, we're going to go straight back into the Swift main page. And if we just go back, and this time we can do the same thing, but by threatened fauna by local government area. So click on that, click on Wyndham City, and exactly the same thing. We have the legend here, and we have usually a fairly extensive list of threatened species in the particular local government area that you're looking at. So again, I pick out the ones that you've got endangered and critically endangered, and just pick those ones out of your list. So there are those two sections there that are fairly easy to look at. So next of all, we're going to go back into the template. So now you would have filled in the threatened flora in your local government area, and again, the threatened fauna that is in your local government area. And then we can do the same thing, but actually bring it down to a bit more of a farm scale. You may already have this information through your land care group or other networks and community organisations that you're involved in, or historical records that are on your farm. You may know what particular threatened plant and animal species are known to exist on your farm. But there is another website that you can use to access this information. So we're going to go back to that website we had before, which was this one here. And similarly, we can turn on some other layers and see if we can bring up some records that might be relevant. So we scroll down again and we look up, when I find it on here, sure, there's one called threatened species. I'm probably staring right at it. Let's have a look. Here we go, here it is. So under the fauna tab, I thought it was a separate tab. Under the fauna tab, we have here threatened rare fauna records. So this is just an indicator. Some of them are very old records, but they can be an indicator of what is nearby on your farm. So if I click on that for fauna, and as you can see, it brings up these squares. So you can actually start to look at some of the different faunal records that might be close to your particular farm. So there's a good chance, I find with a lot of these, that you're going to bring up some quite old historical records. So if I bring up this one here, and it's the same thing, you can look up. So that was a 2001 record, and it was an endangered growling grass frog located in that particular area.
So this is a really easy way for you to actually look up if there's records close to your farm, and then you can populate that list of you've got back on the template that relates to the types of threatened species that have been located close to your farm if you're not already familiar with what types of species you might have close by. So that's how you can fill in that next section here of your template, fill in all of that information. The last section here is an action plan. So what are some of the things that you can do on your farm to actually help protect and preserve the various threatened species that exist across your landscape? So these are obviously fairly personal and relate specifically to the way you run your enterprise and the types of practices and philosophies that you have in place or are aspiring to have in place. So we're going to go through, I'm not going to go through specifically some of the actions. I will show you an example template that I have filled in shortly, and I have made an extensive list of actions there as fairly generic statements. But I think this is important for each farmer to write in individually what it is that they would like to do, an action on their farm towards protecting and enhancing habitat for threatened species. So that's the next section of your plan there to fill in. And the last section that we're actually going to look at is quite a few websites that I find are really good websites for actually obtaining all sorts of different types of information that might relate to biodiversity on your farm. So the first one we're going to look at here is Land for Wildlife. And again, there is a link in your instruction leaflet and a link to the Land for Wildlife page. So there's some information there about a network or an organisation within a state government that you might be interested in signing up to. The next one we're looking at here is the Melbourne Water programs that are available for managing rural land and stream frontage. So again, the links are there for you to have a look at, but both of these programs offer lots of ideas and incentives behind best practices for managing properties to protect waterways. A particular website that I quite like is this one, which I'm going to bring up. This one's called Sustainable Farms. They know that I have Project Envy. I really like this project and what they're achieving with the project. And there's lots and lots of interesting stuff on their website, their Facebook page, and the webinars that they've been holding. So I definitely say check out this website. It's really good for getting some ideas around best practices on your farm. So definitely have a look at that one. The last two little sections that we're just going to look at, this one here, which again relates to the City of Wyndham. And specifically, your local government area is likely on their website to have what I would call a cheat sheet. So access to information around the habitat and the threatened species that are within your local government area. So it's always good to seek advice through your local government and start by doing a bit of a search on their webpage for information on threatened species or indigenous plants, sort of some keyword searches that you might do. So this one is quite specific to the City of Wyndham. And you can see it's called Habitat Heroes. So there's lots of information in there about plants that you can plant to help provide habitat for all sorts of native flora and fauna and also threatened species. So check that one out in your local government area. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the main reasons for having a documented plan is so that you can meet any future schemes and certification processes that might be in place that actually require you to have your plan documented. So I think lots of people do lots of things on their farm already to protect biodiversity, but you may not have it in some sort of documented format that enables you to provide that information to your industry group or the organisation that's providing the incentive that you're hoping to sign up to. So some of the ones to be aware of in future that are potential opportunities is this one here. So this is being a pilot that's being looked at through the National Farmers Federation, and it's called the Australian Farm Biodiversity Certification Scheme. So as you can see by that, it's only in a trial phase at the moment, but there'll be lots of information coming out about this, I'm sure, in the future. So as you can see, it does run until the middle of 2022. So I would say stay tuned for that and find information out about this. But this is certainly looking like the way things are going in future to incentivise and offer land stewardship incentives to farmers for protecting and enhancing the biodiversity on their farm and then across the broader landscape. So I hope that this tutorial has provided you with the right information to help you put together your template if it's something that you've not really had much exposure to around biodiversity. I will just bring up a template that I have pre-filled in, and I'll just drag that one over. So again, this is an example. Just ignore the photo. Obviously, it's not a vegetable farm on the photo, but again, it's just an example, and the idea is for you to put your own photos in place that represents your farm. So you can see I have filled this one in so you can see what a finished one looks like. And I've based it on the tutorial that I have just talked you through right now. So you can see I've put those EVCs in and the bioregion. I've talked that we know that there was a little bit of native vegetation along those riparian areas of the river. And there's windbreaks throughout the landscape there as well that join up with the river. So that's some of the information that I have put in there. There's that list of threatened flora. As you can see, I've not made it too extensive. And then I've got the fauna list here as well. And here I have put together some of those action plan statements around some of the things that can be done on farm to help improve the farm itself, but also the biodiversity assets that you've already identified across your landscape. So this is it's by no means an exhaustive list, and it's by no means the list as well for you to be following. It's just some examples of things that can be done in ways like protecting weeds and eliminating weeds and pest animals across a farm, ways of managing vegetation and habitat that better supports native plants and animals. So that's looking at it from an in-crop or pasture perspective, revegetation opportunities, and also some of those wetlands and waterway areas as well. So lots and lots of different ideas that you can use, or you'll have some of your own. And again, some of the other actions that might be relevant to some farmers that are interested in taking up some of these existing networks and schemes, such as Land for Wildlife and some of those Melbourne Water incentive programs. So I hope that this template has provided you with the information that you would be seeking if you want to put together your own documented plan for biodiversity. If you've got any suggestions or ideas for ways we can improve this plan, or there's things that don't work very well in terms of documenting the information, then please let us know. Otherwise, enjoy the template.